I've been type 1 diabetic for 26 years. I'm now 57 and in the best shape of my life. My faith in God and the life altering diabetes diagnosis are my why. As a nurse practitioner with 28 years in medicine and over 100,000 patients treated, I specialize in hormone optimization, metabolic health, and fitness in women who've been told their bodies have turned against them. Today, I'm walking you through what 26 years actually taught me, what I used to believe about eating and training with a chronic condition, and what broke that thinking and what I do now. The diagnosis I thought was the worst thing that could happen to me. I was 31 years old. My third child had just been born, and I was working in emergency medicine. I'd spent my entire adult life being disciplined about my health. Limited alcohol, regular exercise, careful about what I ate. And I got diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic. My first reaction was anger, pure anger. I had done everything right. This felt like my body going back on a deal that I thought we had. There was a nurse I worked with in the same ER. She was 40, one of the sharpest people I'd ever worked alongside. She got diagnosed with leukemia right around the same time that I got my diagnosis. She died 6 months later. I went back to work after her funeral, and when I stood there looking at my glucose monitor, something shifted that I haven't been able to unfeel since. She could not manage what she had, but I could. That week, my diagnosis stopped being a life sentence and started being information. A few months later, I started running because I needed to feel in control of something. I ran with some nurses from the ER, so I knew if my blood sugar dropped, they would know exactly what to do. Short races first and then longer ones. 13 months after my diagnosis, I finished a marathon. That whole last stretch, I kept saying the same thing out loud to myself. You are in control. What I now know that I didn't know then is that those words weren't coming from me alone. I had a faith deep down that God had a plan in all of it, even when I couldn't see it clearly. That phrase was my way of holding on to both things at once. My responsibility to act and his hand underneath it. The diagnosis didn't make me fragile. It made me pay attention in a way most people never have to and never will. What living with type 1 actually teaches you. Managing type 1 diabetes is that you get real-time feedback on everything you do to your body. Every meal, every workout, every bad night of sleep, every stressful week at work, every hormone shift. It all shows up in the numbers. Most people guess at how their body is responding to things. For 26 years, I've had to know. And that forced attention has taught me things I couldn't have learned in any other way. I now know how my blood sugar responds to strength training versus cardio. I know exactly what one bad night of sleep does before I've even checked a number. I know how stress hits my physiology before I feel it emotionally. As I have worked on my fitness over the years, I used to be a big runner. I would actually be running and jogging along the street, poking my finger, trying to get a little blood drop to test. And that was long before my glucose monitor that I have now. But what I found is that when I ran long distance and I was taking in carbohydrates, my blood sugar would actually spike. Then I had to take more insulin to balance that out. And it was very tricky to make sure I didn't have a hypoglycemic event during my long run. What I now see is now I'm focusing more on muscle mass and weight resistance training. My blood sugars are actually more stable because that muscle mass is soaking up the extra glucose and not requiring extra insulin, which allows me to maintain my body fat percentage and more dense muscle mass with stable blood sugars. Most women eating clean and exercising consistently have no idea why their body isn't changing. They try something for 6 weeks, feel like it's not working, and then they quit. They're guessing. They can't see the internal feedback. I've never been able to ignore the internal feedback. Most people would call that a burden. I call it an education. The people who can't figure out why their body won't change usually just haven't been shown how to understand what their body is telling them, what I actually do, and what I had to stop. I want to be specific here because vague fitness advice is almost useless. So here's my routine. I have to wake up very early in the morning to get my workout in because of my crazy schedule, as you all have. So the first thing I do is I wake up on my phone and I can see what my blood sugar is. If I'm running a little high, I know that I'm going to go work out for an hour and my blood sugar can actually drop quickly. Again, we're activating muscles. We're going to soak up that extra glucose floating around. So I have to plan accordingly. My typical workouts are at least 3 days a week of weight resistance training. I do 2 sets, 4 exercises each, and then I do each one 4 times. That usually takes me about 45 minutes, and the whole time I am glancing at my phone and my glucose monitor to see where my blood sugars are and where they're trending. I personally use something called EWAT. I learned about at a medical conference, which is exercise with oxygen therapy. It is a mask where you breathe in 93% of oxygen. And so I do my last 15 minutes of workout in a high heart rate targeted cardio. Usually it's running on my treadmill or rowing with my mask on, breathing in that extra high concentrated oxygen. What I have found since sticking with this routine is, again, I am maintaining and building muscle mass. So I do see the trends of my blood sugars less likely to go high throughout the day. At the end of the day, of course, I have to step back and think, how are my sugars? How is my nutrition? Was it higher in protein, less carbohydrate? And that's really where I'm trying to keep it because, as we know, carbohydrates can elevate glucose. I have stuck with this for consistently the last 6 months, really longer than that, but really as we get older, really trying to dial in and set a good example for my audience, as well as making my health a priority. And this has allowed me to manage my blood sugars, feel strong, feel confident, and again, be in the best shape of my life at 57. So it is very rewarding and empowering. What I had to stop doing took longer to figure out than what I started doing. For years, I pushed too hard. Emergency medicine trains you to function through difficult things. I thought that same mentality would serve me in the gym. It doesn't. Recovery is part of training. And for someone managing insulin, ignoring recovery doesn't just slow your progress, it creates a cycle that's genuinely hard to break out of. One thing I have figured out through my fitness journey is that some of the healthy foods that we suggest to our patients can actually raise blood sugars. Fruit is a perfect example. We all think, I'm going to grab that orange or that peach, and that's healthy. And again, if I'm trying to have some carbohydrates in my diet and I go for that choice, I rapidly see an increase in my sugar. What I have found is if I really want that piece of fruit, I couple it with a fat or a protein, which it slows down the absorption of glucose so you don't have those big spikes. It will match the metabolism of glucose so you have a little bump, but it carries you and lasts longer. Coupling this with not overtraining, my body has a chance to recover without the huge glucose spikes. Then at 47, I had a complete hysterectomy, then thyroid cancer, then Graves' disease. And for years, I didn't get my hormones replaced properly. My blood sugar control got harder. My body composition shifted. My energy became unpredictable in a way that had nothing to do with how I was managing my diabetes. On top of this, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone aren't just mood hormones. They directly affect how sensitive your body is to insulin, whether your muscles recover and whether your body holds fat or releases it. Once I replaced my hormones correctly, things stabilized in a way I hadn't felt in years. And now I get to watch it happen in my patients every single week. You can train consistently, eat right, and manage a chronic condition perfectly, and still feel like your body isn't cooperating. If what I just described sounds familiar, you're doing things right and your body still isn't responding the way it should. That's exactly what this channel is about. I cover the hormone and metabolic picture every week. Subscribe so you can catch the next one. The pattern I watch play out over and over in my patients. In my practice, I work with a lot of women managing type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance, and I see the same thing constantly, which frustrates me every time because I know exactly what's coming. They're waiting until their numbers improve before they commit to working out seriously. Waiting until they lose some weight before they feel motivated enough to make real changes. Waiting until things feel more stable before they take the big steps. They've built a logical case for why now isn't the right time. And the logic holds together just enough that they keep believing it. Here's what I want to say to every one of them: the numbers don't improve first and then make room for the healthy habits. The healthy habits are what move the numbers. Waiting for the condition to improve before you start is waiting for the result before you do the work. I watch women come into my office who've been told their diabetes is just where they are now. Genetics, aging, manage the medication, and accept the trajectory. Then 6 months into a protocol that works, hormone optimization, consistent training, nutrition that actually fits their physiology, they come back with labs that look like a completely different person's. I'm not saying medication is never the answer. It often is. I'm saying the story that your diagnosis is the ceiling of what's possible is almost never accurate. Your body is more responsive than most providers give it credit for. Your diagnosis tells you what's happening in your body right now. It has nothing to say about what's possible 6 months from now. The only thing that actually keeps you consistent. I want to be honest about something. Discipline didn't get me here. I've watched people with extraordinary discipline burn out completely. They push through for months on willpower alone, white knuckling every meal and every workout, and then collapse back into old patterns because willpower runs out. Every time, it always does. What keeps me consistent for 26 years is something I don't hear other providers talk about. And I think that is a problem. When you think about your health goals, losing weight, getting stronger, getting your energy back, are you chasing a social standard of beauty? Are you trying to look a certain way so someone else approves of you? Because that motivation is fragile. I've watched it fail people who had every resource and every reason to succeed. What changed things for me and what I watched change things for my patients is a completely different question. Am I honoring what God gave me? This body was given to me. It's not mine to abuse, ignore, or give up on. It's mine to steward. That's a different relationship with your health than most women ever think about. When I was running through a thyroid cancer diagnosis, through surgical menopause, through the moments I was genuinely scared, I wasn't running on discipline. I was running on something that doesn't run out. The belief that God put me here for a reason that requires me to show up, that my health struggles aren't punishments, they're opportunities He gave me to build something in myself I couldn't have built any other way. I have 3 grandchildren. I want to see them grow up. That's what I picture when getting up early feels hard. I need a reason that's bigger than the discomfort of changing. And I challenge you to ask whether that reason is rooted in what God sees in you, not what the world's standards of beauty tells you you're supposed to look like. Nobody white knuckles weight loss just for a number on a scale. You have to have a deeper why, like doing it for God and for people you love. I want to close with the part that took me the longest to see clearly. For the first few months after my diagnosis, I was angry. I felt like I'd been handed something unfair, and I spent energy trying to find my way back to who I was before. But the body I have now at 57, after 26 years managing this, after cancer, after menopause, after everything, is stronger than the body I had before any of it. The hard things didn't take something from me. They built something in me that couldn't have been built any other way. I give God the glory for that. I don't say that as a footnote. It's the foundation of everything I do. If you're dealing with a diagnosis right now, or a body that doesn't feel 100%, or a provider who's told you this is just how aging works, I want you to hear this. What you're dealing with is information. Your body is trying to tell you something. And the women I watch transform inside my practice aren't the ones who had the easiest starting point. They're the ones who stopped waiting for easier. If you want to understand the hormone piece of what I talked about today, because for most women over 40, that's where the answers actually live. The video I want you to watch next is the one I did on what's actually happening to your hormones at 40. Watch that one next.